Hello, welcome back to the Wild. My name is Beast, and today we're back with Hello Lady. I know I decided to say that quickly. Anyways, back with Hello Lady. We are today. In case anyone is interested, I spent the time before this recording just getting ROMs for Devil Survivor and Devil Survivor 2, because why the fuck not? Anyways, that is besides the point. I was told that apparently it's fine for me to watch the opening now at this point. So it's like that it would whet my expectations for Saku-Route. I'm probably still not gonna do it. I'm just gonna waste time. If anything, I'm gonna watch it myself on my own time after the fucking route. Anyways, let's just immediately get into it. Fucking freezing, by the way. Saku showed me around school. Showed me around after school.
そろそろあなたもスクールに慣れてきたかしら。
君のエスコートはいつまで続くのかね。もちろん私は一生でも全く何も問題はないが。
問題だらけだ。慣例では1ヶ月というところね。あなたの場合もう大丈夫そうだけど。
それは寂しくなってしまうね。
私はせいせいするわね。何かと問題ばっかり起こすし、現在進行形で問題の塊だし、おまけに量まで同じだし。
Are you gonna thank the stars for that last one by the end of this route?
思いもよらぬ事態で胸がときめくのかね。
頭が痛くなるの。
She pulled out a piece of candy and started licking it all over. She licked it from every direction. A fact important enough to note twice.
未知や困難も楽しむ余裕が必要ではないかね。このスクールの目指すノーブルが人類のトップランナーというなら、行く先は未知ばかりだ。筆頭の君が未知に心騒がされていては務まらない。
ほんと、時々まともなこと言うんだから。
Like, why do you have to be reasonable at exactly these times? Please, just stay unreasonable the whole time so I can at least explain this shit away as you being crazy.
ストレスが溜まっているのなら体を動かすのはどうだろう。健全な肉体には健全な精神が宿るかどうかはともかく、不健全な肉体よりはよほど良い。
いいわ。私もちょうど体を動かしたかったところだし、体育館のコートまで付き合ってくれない？
そういえば君はかつてテニス部だと言っていたな。
細かいこともよく覚えているのね。ええ。と言っても3年以上前だけど。
いいとも、お付き合いしよう。かつてテニスのデモンプリンスと呼ばれた私の腕前を披露しよう。
誰が呼んだんだ、誰が。
That day we played tennis until evening.
魔球大回転分身サーブ。
Stop it.
普通のテニスをやれ。
A day passed, then another, and then a whole lot of days passed. A guest house, apparently. Why is there a guest house? Aside from the monthly parties thrown for outsiders, the reception hall to the east of the academy sometimes held banquets. Nobles had to learn how to behave in high society, so it was considered part of our training.
おい、食欲ヤンキー。ビュッフェ方式になると山ほど小皿に料理盛る癖はやめてください。
I take that as a personal offense towards me, Eru. It's a buffet! What else are you supposed to do with it?
これはつい。だってな、ちょろっと盛るのってもったいないし。
ノーブルがそんな世知辛いことを言ってどうしますの？
そらこう、なんとか言ってやってくれよ。
まあいいじゃない。玉緒ちゃんも悪気はないから。
全然全くこれっぽっちもよくありませんわ。
エトワールの一人、クラウンのメンバーともあろうものがこのざまだとは。
I watched Mitri, who seemed ready to shed a tear.
彼女も実に麗しい豊満の持ち主。今日まで機会を得られずにいたが、この手で確かめねばなるまい。
My own professional instinct saw me that her breasts had the potential to enter the realm of true voluptuousness.
やめろ。
ほほう、サク。この成田真理に美の追求をするなと。まさか、そんな冒涜的なことを言うのかね。
何が美の追求よ。痴漢よ。 100% 間違いなく痴漢、セクハラ。あんたの頭の中身の方がよっぽど乙女に冒涜的だわ。
私が痴漢冤罪程度で怯える男だと。
冤罪じゃないだろ。ああ、もうたまにいいこと言うくせに、どうして普段のこいつはこう変態なんだろう。
人間とはあまりに奥深い一個の小宇宙なのだよ。
下り顔で言うのがさらにムカつく。
ではムカつきついでに一つ申し込もう。一曲どうかね。そろそろダンスタイムのようだ。
ああ、うん、いいわよ。でも成田、ちゃんと踊れるの？
心配は無用だ。私を誰だと思っているのだね。
Like if Naito would know how to dance, probably. My room, I assume, is where I'm supposed to go here. Don't fucking start with this again! You know what? I'm not even like gonna fuck around and find out. I'm just immediately gonna pull out the goddamn route guide. I'm not. I'm not doing this again! Hello, lady route guide. Meet them boldly, meet them with vigor. Hallway, I refuse. A gentleman does not escalate for anything. Classroom, living room, massage them kindly. Gym, guest house, my room. Okay. I'm going to restart. Hey, this time we don't have to actually read anything. It should be fast, I hope. Meet them boldly. Like, I can't use the fucking scenario select because apparently it fucking carries points over. Which does make sense, by the way. Hallway is apparently the right fucking choice here. Hello? That was odd.
と言っても、あなたのつくべき。
Gentleman does not escalate for anything.
では、課題をスタートし。
Classroom?
それでは講義。
Living room. Massage them kindly. I know peak commentary, you're just reading out the choices and then just skipping ahead. Just fucking peak commentary. I'm 100% aware of that, but hey, what the fuck am I supposed to do about this here? I don't really have a choice right now. Lastly, my room, and then we're finally on her route. I hope.
これはとある男と女の絶望へ至る物語である。
That sounds fucking worrying! Curtain raiser, achievement unlocked. That's fucking ominous, I guess. Flames raged, golden sparks burned the night as the fire that looked like crimson dragons lit the surrounding forest. Searing wind carried the stench of burned corpses. The nauseating scent obviously signaled death. Not just a single one, but dozens. The Disease still becomes sustenance for the flames as they share the fate with the surrounding mansion. It was late at night. A merciful smile of the slightly waning moon above did reach the place. It felt like a replay of the night 7 long years ago.
この灼熱の地獄こそ我々にはふさわしい。なぜならばこの身に流れるは憎悪という名の煮えた鉛。そうは思わないかね。
Only 2 people still retained the ability to move. One was myself, while the other was a pile of rotting meat who sat on the ground, shaking in fear. Oh, Shinzon's dead again! Shinzon Katsuragi cried and wailed. The sense of refinement that surrounded him a few hours ago had vanished. The remains burning around him were those of his mansion. His mansion, wealth and wife had been consumed by fire, and were burning to ash without him being able to do anything. It mirrored the scene from that night well. The moon shone as blood and flesh had mixed, filling the air with a nightmarish stench of burning corpses. Their lives, history, future, everything had been thrown into the fire. Red tongues of flame had formed a burning curtain. Many people dashing about had resembled poorly made shadow puppets. Awfully warped, they'd run in circles before collapsing. Many men he didn't recognize had chased out the people of the house. Even Katsuragi, rifle in hand, had joined in on it. It had been quite the odd sight. He remembered it well. A body that resembled his father fell to the floor. Though he'd found it hard to identify him due to all the damage. He'd seen a few familiar faces. None of them had appeared complete. They had missing hands, legs, heads, bodies. Try as he might, he'd failed to find his mother. Red stains on the hallway wall might have been her. After wandering through the searing vortex as his throat and skin burned, he finally found his sister, who'd luckily been shot in the chest while asleep, apparently in the middle of a nice dream.
すべてがあの日のまま。7年前、帝を焼き殺したあの世の紅蓮の再現だ。何もかも、そう。一切合切、最大漏らさず、人世の夢に思い出させてくれる。生きり立つような最悪の地獄だ。我々の7年ぶりの再会を祝うには、誠にふさわしいクライマックスだと思わないかね。
The man who'd lost his wealth, status, family, everything, tried to crawl away like a pathetic pig to protect the only thing he had left, his life. With the heavens defying, darkness banishing, crimson sickles of hell were behind me, I rhythmically approached the man and grinned. How amusing. The sight filled my heart with joy. Certain that he had never been so desperate. His heavy stomach bounced as he struggled hard, but he failed to walk or stand up properly. He desperately moved his limbs, but they only took him a meter ahead. I, on the other end, didn't panic or rush. Approached him like a shark smelling blood, or hunting hound chasing a wounded target. The despair and fear he felt as I took my steps was the greatest offering to the innocents he murdered in cold blood.
そんなありえない。まさかまさかお前は生きてるはずがない。死んだ。絶対に確実に死んでるはずだった。帝春水。
死んだというのなら不思議なことだ。見るがいい、あの炎を。なすすべなく殺された貴様の兵を。ならば死者がこれを成したとおっしゃるのか。生きてはいないとっくに死んだ亡骸が聖者のごとくうろつき回ってこのような血と悲惨を表したというのかね。
I exaggeratedly spread my arms and glared at the struggling, terrified pile of flesh like the star of a play. I looked down on him with eyes as cold as they were cruel, bearing the grudge of my innocent sister and family. There was the profound anger built up over the past 7 years. While bearing the grudge of my innocent sister and family, as well as the profound anger built up over the past 7 years, I planned to end this man. Everything had gone according to plan. I had 4 main targets. After Takeshi Hanazono, I'd quickly prepared and executed the second act. Through various means, I'd rid Katsuragi of his wealth and warned him that I would get my revenge, making him hole up in his mansion and fortify it. It was all expected, however, so I'd killed the soldiers gathered around him with little effort, leaving only this ugly pile of rotten meat.
生きていたのか。
いいや、お前は全くの正解だ。桂木新山、帝春水なる男はとうの昔に死んでいる。このような悲嘆が、かくも無残な破滅が、およそ人のなせる技であろうか。
Touched by the wind, the crimson flames let out a louder roar. The sound of the match collapsing as it was consumed by orange and red was akin to the voice of a laughing clown.
そうとも、お前たちもやってのけた地上の無残、あらゆる残酷。それらのすべては人間が生む人間という名の獣が。
Oh, how comical. Humans consumed one another merely by living. How sinful and how natural.
しかして今宵この場にあるのは血の通った聖者にあらず死者にもあらず、冥府で安らかな眠りにつくことさえ叶わなかったただの亡霊だ。
みんな燃えた。燃えた燃えた。何もかも全部。
Ah, he's going insane. How lovely.
さよう、7年前お前が血と罪に汚れた手でかき集めた財も名誉も消え失る。なんと慈悲深いことだろう。炎とは善悪の区別なく人しなみに灰と化してくれるのだから。残すところはあと一つ。お前から残された全てを奪う。桂木新山、お前の命と魂を祭壇に捧げてこの第2幕のフィナーレとしよう。
違う。あれは違う。全部黒船に命令されて俺はそそのかされた。
As you face my oath-sworn arm, the very same type of Luger P08 that had once ended Mikado's life. The dying man used his verbose tongue.
なるほど、そうだろう。お前には帝を裏切る知恵も胆力もなかったろう。全ては黒船の仕業だ。それが何だというのかね。お前は悪をなした。罪なき命を奪い、財を奪い、欲しいままにした。今さらそれをなかったことにできるはずもあるまい。お前の命は7年前のあの夜に終わっている。この7年の余力はさて十分堪能しただろう。
嫌だ。死にたくない。死にたくない。死にたくない。死にたくない。助けて。誰か。空子。空子。助けて。助けて。助けて。
Pathetic man tried to run. At that point, seeing him like that didn't make me feel anything, so I merely placed my gun against the back of his head.
7年前お前が殺した者たちもきっとそう叫んでいたに違いない。お前は一度でも顧みたか。血で狂い惨劇を欲しいままにし、踏みにじり嘲笑わなかったが、回答など必要ないと。全ては終わったことなのだから。惨劇はあった。桂木新山、地獄で花園と二人、黒船たちが来るのを待つがいい。されば罪には罰を、ふさわしき鉄槌を。
Still half crawling, Shinzan Katsuragi stopped moving. Second act had concluded at long last. Before I'd returned to this country, I'd taken many lives and spilled blood over the past 7 years. This one seemed to reverberate differently than any other. This bullet had been shot not on behalf of any cause, but my own hatred. I'd done what I had to. The conclusion didn't make me feel all that much. The life of a traitor was far from a match for my own anger or hatred. I reminisced about the sky I'd gazed up at long ago. My young fingers had pointed at a rainbow decorating it. Those were days that had long since passed and would never return. I knew nothing would ever return, including my precious Rudy. Thus, my only choice was to move forward. Either I or them had to drown in a pool of their own blood, so I had to see it through. That was fine with me. 2 acts of the bloody masquerade remained. The lives taken would be a solemn prayer offered on the altar of those who'd faced an unjust end. And the fact that their deaths would push those that remained among the living into the depths of sorrow did not matter in the least.
成田様、急いで立ち去った方が。これだけの騒ぎにしてしまいました。さすがに警察も動くことでしょう。
Ishia silently appeared from the darkness, her uniform skirt dancing in the wind.
事件が表沙汰になったところで、私はスクール、黒船の城の中だ。手は届くまい。あの男にとって最悪の敵である私の安全が、あの男自身の力で守られるというのも。
No, either way, I hadn't left any evidence of my involvement. No matter how competent Japanese policemen were, they had no way of linking the incident to me. Ishii found it hard to digest my words, which was a rarity for her. She looked at me with slightly closed eyes, a sign of consideration.
心配は無用だ。残る仇は2人。
いずれもスクールの重鎮。一筋縄ではいかないでしょう。新山が死んだことで警戒も強めることと思われます。それに黒船の配下には正体不明の化け物もいます。
She referred to the thing that had appeared when I targeted Hanazono, a mysterious creature that had been jumping on a speeding car and then tried to kill him for accessing the Academy's secrets. Ishia had sniped it off, but when I looked around later, we found no body, blood, or tracks, meaning that it was still at large. Handguns were a different story, but a supersonic rifle bullet had the power to destroy a human body by merely grazing it. If that truly survived after being shot directly, it was truly a monster.
だからなんだ。黒船が吉ンバ難攻不落の城に立てこもろうと、あまたの魔物を手足に扱おうと、成田真理のやるべきことは変わらない。
はい、ご主人様。
私は夜明け前に学園に戻る。残りの仇はスクールの人間。まずは私が仕掛けてみよう。そちらもいつでも動けるよう準備を整えておいてくれ。
はい、一切怠りはありません。
君は完璧なメイドだ。
Ishia's silent bow was, or at least appeared to be, as immaculate as ever. A little over 2 weeks had passed since Mitri Kabutoyama left the academy. With both Takeshi Hanazono and Shinzan Katsuragi dead, Shindri Narita's revenge strategy had reached its halfway point. 2 targets remained. Slipping by the Academy's neurotic security layer, I snuck back in. Then, without anyone noticing, I returned to my room. I washed away the smell of blood, soot, and gunpowder with the help of both burning hot and freezing cold showers. In the mirror, I saw my warped mouth. I was grinning. My heart, which had I'd once presumed emotionless, filled with a jet-black feeling I'd never felt before. Had I not felt joy when mercilessly killing my targets? Had I not found bliss upon seeing their frightened faces?
静まれ
Silenced my roiling, tar-like emotions. Vengeance was a bloody solemn prayer, as well as a rite for the repose of souls. If I found joy in it, the prayer would be reduced to nothing but mere slaughter. The 7 years she and I had spent on Earth were drenched in layers upon layers of blood and gunpowder. They were days as ugly and vile as mankind itself, etched onto him as he wandered from one chaotic region to another. Could have easily become more beast than man, but there was a rule he'd set on himself that helped. But there was a rule he set on himself that helped him stay human. He swore to never feel hatred over his own lot in life. It had all begun that night. After many days and nights, he placed the many puzzle pieces together and figured out what had happened 7 years ago. He failed to understand the truth behind the tragedy as a child. But once he traveled beyond the sea, he followed the threads and thoroughly investigated it. An outsider named Tokinoyomi had invited Kurofuno Shinzan and Takeshi Hanazono to join her. And they then betrayed and slaughtered the Mikados for being a nuisance. Okay, so hold on. So you're trying to say that Tokino was actually the instigator. The fuck? Only a single person had survived, Shunsei Mikado. Kurofune himself had shot him, but fortunately, or unfortunately, it wasn't fatal. Shinri Naita covered the throbbing wound on his right hand. The scar there was from Kurofune's near-fatal bullet. Kurofune saw Shunsei Mikado as a sample who'd happened to survive the fire. He had him bound and carried off somewhere to be used as a precious specimen. He thought it an inevitability. However, Kurofune had failed to consider something. In many cases, HMIs underwent ascensions in extreme situations. Oh, hold on. So, Kurofune was aware that he didn't die in the fire, is what you're saying. The fuck? Anyways, in case nothing better shows up, threats to their lives and powerful emotions were prime triggers for that. The Mikados were a line of hereditary HMIs, but due to the thinning of their bloodline, neither he nor his sister had a halo. At least not until that night. Like Tokinoyomi said explained in her lectures, when faced with death, Shunsui developed a power. Without even thinking of the consequences of his actions, he tried to escape the plane transporting him. Despite his wounded body, the memory of his sister had spurred him into action. He had recalled the sight of her body burning in the mansion, as well as his hatred towards Kurofune who'd shot him. He truly believed he couldn't let it end like that. The plane carrying Shunsei Mikado crashed somewhere in Central Asia. No one could have possibly survived dying twice. Both Kurofune and Tokinoyomi thought that all had been reduced to ash. And without a certain someone, Shunsei Mikado would have become a true revenant. He didn't know the man's name, for he hadn't even mentioned it even once. The man who'd saved Shunsei Mikado was an old wraith. He was also a legend of sorts. He'd taken countless lives, and he was a mythical individual who'd been involved in regime changes, conflicts, acts of terrorism, and coup d'etats all around the world. He'd laughed, cackled often. Despite killing and ruining countless people, he showed no remorse or shame as he traveled around the world. However, the old man knew far too much. That was why people in power had feared him and distanced themselves from him. He'd lost the ability to return to his homeland, so he had no choice but to live in a dry wasteland of sand and rock. He'd left wealth all across the world. The riches he'd gathered through bloody means took various forms and were enough to buy a small country. He was all alone in the world, with no family to speak of. He might have had friends or lovers at some point, but they had long since abandoned him. He was his human version of a withered tree, dragging his weakened limbs as he waited his fate, to die without leaving anything behind. Jutsu Mikado was the last person he'd met. Miraculously, the boy had survived the plane crash, facing death twice, and surviving both times was unlikely by itself. But then he'd heard footsteps approaching him. He'd cried at how powerless he was and wailed in anger. Such injustice had happened. He had no means to set things right. Even after being blessed with 3 miracles, he was fated to die without having accomplished anything. There was no justice in this world. His innocent sister had died. As he grew certain that he would die before anyone heard his cries and curses, his body had lifted up. It had seemed to almost become weightless. Yo! The man was strange. He was the kind of person who would have seemed at home, sitting cross-legged on a boulder in a stream while watching the sunlight leak through the trees as he drank fine sake. With a face laden with wrinkles as deep as his sorrows, he'd slightly opened the eyes that almost blended with them and said, "You know Japanese? Tell me if you do. If you don't, do something about it. If you die, I could kill. If you want to die, I can kill you right now. If you got something more to do, I'll take you in. Now it's easy to just die, if you ask me." Shunsei had cried out his choices without even a moment of hesitation. What had followed was probably the last whim of a man who had known nothing but killing all his life. "Yeah, you're a scumbag. You don't become like me, but you can't. Yeah, but you can get about halfway there." Merely remembering it upsets Shinri Narita, but the vile man had led him around various areas. He taught him a means of survival, a way to overcome all difficulties. After the years of endless blood, steel, and gunpowder. Again, in case nothing else shows up, the old man had passed away as peacefully as a collapsing tree in winter, leaving Shinri Narita as his heir. The world changes. That's just how it is. What's the point of being scared of that? Those words were his pet saying, and whatever the hell you want. Those words were his last. The techniques of knowledge and vast wealth I'd inherited from him had become the foundations of my revenge.
ようやくここまで来た。
After harmonizing my body and mind with the breathing of Gebd, I silenced the dark urges within me. The desire to enjoy the murder surged within me. I couldn't deny it, and I wouldn't. That too was part of me after all. However, that did not mean I planned to let it control me. The academy was under the wing of Kurofune Mikado. Shinri Narita was well aware of what that meant. The place was akin to a spider's web. It placed me close to his throat. A slight mistake meant my demise. My body shook, trembling with excitement. Standing on that stage was akin to wielding a double-edged blade that only served to embolden my efforts. Kurofune Mikado's life neared its end. I planned to take his life as payment for what he'd done 7 years ago. I walked out into the living room late at night to calm my raging emotions. The night was a rare moment when I had trouble merely waiting for morning to arrive in my room. Was it my boiling blood, or had my mind frayed due to the rage? The impulse making me restless was black, stuck to me like mud, and released smoke even when I closed my eyes. One of the walls of the dark room was the glass entrance. Like the ones in our rooms, it had no curtain. Because of it, it was cutting-edge technology that became opaque with just a push of a button. Slightly waning moon at the academy showered in its light. The light falling down like marine snow lit the buildings, making it look like they were underwater. As I entered the living room, I heard Surf breathing on the sofa and instantly subdued my presence. Silently looked towards the source and found Saku Tanashi sleeping on the soft sofa, curled up like a kitten.
こんなところで何をしているのかね。眠るなら部屋のベッドの方がいい。
Seemed to be sleeping peacefully, so I considered leaving her be. However, I decided against it because it wasn't proper for the insignia to nap in such an open area. I lightly shook her, making her open her eyes and get up on the sofa.
珍しいわね、こんな夜遅くに。喉でも渇いたの？
Our beloved insignia looked at me with drowsy eyes. She didn't seem fully awake.
そんなところだが、時間を問題にするなら、君こそ何をしているのかね。
居眠り？今何時？
When I told her the time, her shoulders drooped, making it look like she had messed up somehow.
コーヒー飲んだら戻るつもりだったのに。いつの間にか寝ちゃってたんだ。だらしのない。やだな、最近。時々記憶が途切れるし。体調は維持できてるはずなのに。
たまにはそういう姿も悪くないな。特に制服でない君をこうしてゆっくり眺める機会は珍しいからね。やはり君の豊満は神の父と呼ぶのがふさわしい。
かっこつけてそんな変態なこと言うな。天然性の変態。
Apparently her mind had caught up to the situation. She sat on the sofa properly and stretched. It emphasized her curves and full breasts, making for an excellent sight.
絶品だ。満点を出そう。
あからさまにジロジロ見てないで、少しは悪びれてこっそりやりなさい。
悪いことをしていないのだから悪びれる必要がどこにあるのかね。私は美の信奉者として敬うべきを敬っているだけだ。
敬うべきって？
Another cushion flew with me.
あなたと話してると調子が狂うっていうか。
秀ですぎた才能とはつくづく世間の理解を得られないものなのだと思い知るよ。ところで私は寝苦しさに起きてきたのだが、君は別にそういうわけではないのだろう。どちらかといえば最近の君は寝不足気味のようだしね。
どうしてわかるの？
Her eyes widened in surprise, but my observation was nothing special. It was all a matter of attentiveness. Anyone who saw her every day would have noticed whether they wanted to or not.
よく眠り、よく食べ、よく学ぶ。あるべきが乱れれば人は体に現れる。苦境を耐えられるのと何も問題がないのは別なのだよ。私のような鍛錬を積んでいればともかく。つまり最近寝不足の君のお肌は荒れ気味だ。毎朝のメイクでうまく隠しているようだがね。
She immediately pouted like a child who'd just been caught in mischief. That face made the insignia of the crown look like a normal girl her age instead of the strongest HMI at the academy. The all-too-human warmth seemed to almost make the stench of blood around me dissipate. If I knew it, my dark urges had subsided.
さっき記憶が飛ぶとか言っていたようだが、過労ではないのかね。
聞こえてたの？もう油断のならない。
君は筆頭として普段から多くの責務をこなし、多忙を極めている。まして現在はクラウンが定数を書いたままだ。
せっかく入れたのにすっかり冷めちゃった。もう一杯新しいコーヒー作るけど、成田もいる？
いただこう。
I've been drinking faster again as of late. Saku vanished into the kitchen, linking to the living room. Aired dishes, the server mumbling, boiling water. Sounds there were signs of an everyday life. Eventually, she returned with 2 cups.
どうぞ。
感謝を。
I took the coffee Saku made for me.
襟好み激しそうな成田の口に合うかしら。
Like, I'm actually curious how they're gonna handle that, because the fact that there's like no known cure for onslaught syndrome, and we're like basically certain at this point that she has onslaught syndrome already at this point in the story. Are they gonna like pull a fucking cure out of their ass? Or what? Like, I'm curious. So anyways. Like, maybe considering that his type is supposed to be a Hamlet, which is apparently like a physical influence, physically era influence. What if it actually does have like some minor, like, electromancy, so he actually can influence neurons? Actually, no. They say like onslaught syndrome is an actual like. Then again, went away because of the halo went away, so there might be a chance that he could actually like just, if his halo is indeed electromancy, just get rid of the onslaught syndrome using his halo or something. But I'm not sure, since we don't know what his halo actually is. And if it was electromancy, he would probably have been able to use it a lot more. Actually, that would actually also explain why it would give him away in the forest. Since, you know, fucking electric sparks are hard to miss. But then again, making a bit too similar to the main character of good old Riddle Joker.
これでも私はコーヒーにはうるさいたちなのだよ。
それは初耳だわ。
ごまかされないうちに先ほどの話をしておこう。何のための夜更かしかは尋ねないが、もう少し自分の体をいたわってはどうかな。
みんな大変よ。ニトリがいなくなった分、一人一人のやるべきことはどうしても多くなるし。それに、私の負担をいたわるつもりがあるのなら、どこかの誰かさんがいつまでも心情とかなんとか言ってないで欠員埋めてくれると助かるんだけど。
残念ながらそれとこれとは別の話だ。
まあいいけど、でもあれ以来玉緒はどうかしちゃったみたい。すぐにいなくなって講義もよく抜け出してるし。
友人がいなくなってサクは傷ついていないのかね。
私はクラウンの筆頭。そんなことで心騒がせてはいられません。
Saku was honest to a fault. As she might wear the mask of the insignia, she felt to hide her true feelings about her friend's disappearance. Not everyone saw it as a merit, but Narita found it very likable.
ノーブルたるもの、いかなる時も心乱すなかれか。筆頭の責任感と気高さに感服する。
見透かしたこと言うのはやめて。
Tried coffee without any sugar or milk. It was very strong and quickly filled my mouth with a mix of sourness and bitterness.
気負いのない良い味だ。
The honest review made Saku stop mid-gulp and make an odd face. She seemed both bashful and troubled at the same time. Keeping that expression, she looked around the living room.
気負いすぎているのかと思っていたが、そうではないようだ。
それは成田に感謝しておく。
私にかね。
あなた前に言ったでしょ。肩に力が入りすぎてるって。
そんなこともあったな。
Still looking away as Saku nodded.
人の範たらんノーブル。その範たるものの範たるエトワール。成田の言う通りだわ。自分がどうにかしなくちゃって思い込んで、いろいろなものが見えなくなってた。私の両親はごく普通の人だった。ハローどころか何も特別なところなんてない。普通に働いて、笑ったり時々泣いたりしながら精一杯やってた。
Only moonlight brightened the room, so we couldn't make out each other's faces as well. It's probably what let her open up about these things. She's only drank her coffee, speaking of her previously unknown
不
past.
満なんて何もなかったわ。ただ、私がアセンションを起こした時、ちょっとした事件があって、多少の行き違いはあったんだけど。
ご両親は君を心配しておられたのだろう。思い合ってもすれ違うことはある。肉親といっても何もかも通じ合えるわけはないからね。
私は本当に愛されてたと思う。スクールに行くって決めた時も泣いてくれて、でも私の好きにしていいって言ってくれた。スクールには開設されたばかりの頃からずっといるんだ。最古参の一人ってわけ。ある意味自分の家みたいなもので、それにいいのか悪いのか、いつの間にかエトワールの筆頭になんて選ばれてて、
敬われていた。
恐れられてもいたけど仕方ないけど、私のハローはなんていうか、まあ特殊だから。私もっと強くなりたかった。
I feel like I had a theory about this game before I started recording that I wanted to share, and then completely fucking forgot about it. Like, watch me, like, only remember right before it happens that the theory was 100% correct, but no one's gonna fucking believe me, because, well, I literally just said it right before it happens, where it's kind of obvious already. There was no doubt, no promise. There was no doubt, probably. Her words carried power that could stand firm before any storm. Well, no, there was no doubt in her powers. Her words carried power that could stand firm before any
筆
storm.
頭って呼ばれるのにふさわしい自分になりたくて、脇目も振らずに必死で頑張った。私はエルやタマオみたいな先天性型の HMI じゃないから、いろいろな経験が足りてないし、ニトリやソラコみたいないいとこのお嬢様じゃないから。
普通の家の生まれというのを気にしていたのかね。
ああ、気にしてないつもりだったけど、やっぱり引っかかってたのかな。だってほら、クラウンのメンバーで私だけ普通の家の出身だから、その分努力しなくっちゃって、いつの間にかそれしか見えなくなってたんだな。
生まれや血筋を気にするなというつもりはないよ。人間は生来のではなく環境に学び完成されていく。生まれた時の差は一生ついて回る。だがそれだけのことだ。進むべき道を決めるのは自分自身だ。力が足りていないと思うのなら埋めるか諦めるかするしかない。不平をこぼせば世界が変わってくれるとでも言うのかね。だからサク、君のやってきたことは間違ってはいない。
何を偉そうに。私ずっと筆頭だったし、怖がられたりしてたし、成田みたいに平気で突っかかってきたり偉そうな口聞くようなやつ、今まで一人もいなかったんですけど。
すると私は特別ということかね。うん、さっき私に感謝すると言っていた気もするな。いや、礼など不要だとも。だが君のフォーマンに顔を埋めても良いのであれば喜んでそうしよ
う。殺すぞ。
筆頭殿にはもう少し心の余裕が必要なようだ。君があるべき自分を思い出したというならそうなのだろうね。今の君は初めて出会った頃の君の何倍も気高く、そして美しい。
い きなりそんな恥ずかしいセリフ。
人間の価値の本質において生まれや血筋は些細だよ。
人のありようは自分自身で決められるってこと？
人生とは不平等だ。幸福な者がいる傍らに生まれながら死を決定づけられている者がいる。選び取れる道は限られている。人の一生より長い夜にとらわれたまま荒野を行くしかないこともある。この世という舞台の上で我々は神の振る際に右往左往する哀れな駒でしかない。しかし、ただ一つ運命の無残にも宿命の嵐にも立ち向かうための力を最初から与えられている。意志だ。
意志で世界を変えられる？
意志ではなく意志だよ。心は意のままにもならないものだ。全く意味での自由など人間にはない。我々は自由足らんと意志することができるだけだ。たとえ今日世界に敗れようと明日は打ち破ると誓える意志。この瞬間世界が終わってしまうとしても歩みをやめないという意志。それだけが真実の意味での自由だ。意志こそが人間の最も大きな価値だ。私はそう信じているよ。
Saku suddenly thought of something.
ねえ、納得のいかないことはどうする？
You asked me that question while looking straight into my eyes.
私ならば立ち向かうだろう。
Replied without hesitation. The answer was a core aspect of Shinri Narita's existence.
あなたならそうでしょうね。でも相手は自分よりも強いかもしれない。自分のやろうとしていることが他の何かを壊してしまうかもしれない。
その答えなら私に問うまでもないだろう。君はとっくに知っている。
As a noble and true sense, not by blood or status, Saku Otonashi surely understood.
人はそれでも生きねばならない。苦しさも嘆きも悲惨も無残もこの苦海に果てはない。それは特別でも何でもない。この瞬間にも何の意味もなく何一つ残さず死んでいく命がある。突き詰めれば我々の全員が名も知らぬ誰かの死に遠くどこかで加担している。そのありさまを残酷と呼ぶならば世界の正しさこそ残酷だ。正しくないという正しさ以外の何もない。その矛盾の中を我々は生き続けなければならないのだ。歓喜も憤怒も悲哀も希望もまだ見ぬ明日へつなぐ何かも形になるのは生きればこそだ。生とは迷うものだ。過ちを犯し時に敗北さえするものだ。そして死とは敗れることではない。諦めることなのだ。私は嘘もつくが自分の誇りと魂は偽りたくない。信じるところを果たし輝けるものを見出すために。
輝けるもの？
昔思い出すのも抱きしたくなるろくでなしがそんな似合いもしないロマンチストなことを一度だけ漏らしたことがある。命とは輝けるものを探す巡礼のようだと。
Those words had sounded like a momentary mistake as they flowed out of my mouth. Completely forgotten the exchange until mere moments ago. It was a wonder why it had come back to me all of a sudden. Saying it made my heart feel strange.
そのためにも私はなすべきことをなさねばならない。
成田って変態なのにごく稀にまともなこと言うから困るわ。
Saku opened her eyes wide and said something truly rude.
少しも困らない。ついでに指摘するのだが私は変態ではなく美の信仰者なのだ。間違いないよ。
は
Saku raised her voice above my head. Found myself burying my face in her breasts. I was motorboating her, so to speak.
なんということか。いけない。これほどの魔性の巨乳とは思わなかった。私の鋼の国旗心と意志に歯向かって 勝手に動い
Honestly,
て
God, I
し
don't
ま
even
う
like,
とは
like, sure, like, there's a possibility, like, suddenly grabbed your shoulders and just went in, but all I imagine is that he just sits there, like, just like hands behind the, like, fucking arms behind the back, just like, lovely. Using my hands and face, I enjoyed the mythical fullness and perkiness. Exquisite, truly wonderful. Wouldn't have minded if the world ended at that very moment.
今すぐ死ね
Saku attacked me from above at a sharp angle. She was no pro, however, so I had no trouble seeing it coming. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring myself to part with the joy of the fuck. Part with the joy of the
もう
fuck.
全部台無しまったくそのまま朝まで倒れてろ
I couldn't bring myself to part with the joy of the full breasts. I took the blow and collapsed. Visibly upset, Saku pulled out a small metal case. Saw some candy inside. It didn't seem expensive. The design made it look like generic traits, which doesn't suit the insignia of the academy in the least. Apparently Saku liked them a lot. I often saw her sneakily enjoy them during breaks.
深夜に甘味は美容の天敵ではないかね
So collapsed, I humbly asked that question, making her glare at me.
ストレスの緩和に甘みが必要なのまったく一体誰のせいだとじゃあね私もう寝ます
I silently snuck up to her as she tried to leave.
ちょっと
And embraced her tight, making her let out an amusing high-pitched
静か
voice.
におとなしくじっとしていたまえ
静かにって
納得できないことを追うのはやめたまえ
I whispered that into Saku's ear, careful that the security didn't capture it.
一体何の話を
君が近づいているのはドラゴンの王だ人間一人程度たやすく消し飛ばしてしまう
成田あなた何を知っているの
これは単に友人としての気遣いだよここしばらく夜更かしまでしてサクがやっているかもしれないことへの
She quit trying to get away and froze.
あなたなら相手が竜でも虎でも挑むんでしょ
君は一人ではないスクールの筆頭だ君の両肩に背負われた全てを捨てていくのかね
それは
Saku fell silent.
今夜はもう休みたまえ朝までまだいくらか時間はあるサク君には休息が必要だ
ええそうするわおやすみなさい
おやすみ
Saku walked up the stairs, clearly appearing hesitant about something. It looked as though her shoulders had drooped. Perhaps the way I spoke to her was unfair, but I truly didn't want her to face more danger. Saku Tanashi was likely investigating Mituri's disappearance. Saku, as I knew her, would never have blindly accepted the Academy's official words. She would certainly have tried to find out the truth. Isha had investigated the matter and found that Mituri Kabutoyama had died of an illness shortly after leaving the academy. An illness, ending so plain it seemed like a part in a bad theatrical farce. Mituri's disappearance was surely connected to the dark underbelly of the academy. It was truly the tale of a dragon. Carelessly chasing it required far more than just one life. Saku Otanashi was wholly serious. I doubt she planned to reconsider based on my words. But I saw no harm in warning her of the consequences. Ah!
しまった別れ際に胸を揉んでおくのだった
Dear me, I was so focused on my words that I'd forgotten my quest for beauty. Clearly, I wasn't at my best that night. Thus, morning came again. Done with my daily exercise, I went out on an early walk for a change of pace. Professionals generally avoided patterned lifestyles, since that made it easy to predict their actions and trap them. It was a clear summer morning. The vibrant sky was akin to a canvas of cobalt, while the remnants of the silence of the night cooled my morning thoughts. I casually walked around the garden, thoroughly checking the edges of the lawn and below the trees. Just to be sure, I also looked around the dorm.
やはり、といったところか。
I had gotten curious about the identity of the person clad in black. I encountered her in one of my nightly outings, and her skill greatly impressed me. I knew she was a woman. She tried to hide it, but I could tell by her movements and form. She was also young. Literally, she had the skill to sneak by the academy's superb security and downright human physical prowess. Few fit all those criteria. Considering the tightness of security, she likely resided within its walls, which made her a high-level HMI. Among the 200 HMIs at the academy, those with such immense physical prowess were few and far between. Though it was entirely possible to hide a halo, you couldn't fully hide your skill, for that was something that had been etched onto you and became part of you. You didn't even have to look at athletes to know that. Even something as simple as walking differed in effectiveness and results depending on how skilled you were. And it showed in your everyday life, whether you liked it or not.
これもか。
Trees surrounding the dorm had traces that no normal person would have noticed. Were footprint-like marks at the 3-meter height. They'd likely been left there as the person traveled up and down over and over. From the surface to the tree to the dorm's roof, the movements might have seemed nonsensical, but they were actually done to avoid the security layer. The amount of precision made it clear that it was the work of a professional. I meant if your identity was. Upon hearing and sensing someone approach, I cut my thoughts short, but in but a second, I started pretending to be a mere student enjoying some morning exploration.
今朝は早いね。
Like I thought the person was tagging the 7-12 who joined us right as Mitri Kabutoyama had left a month ago. While I seemed to be a student merely exploring, Tagi appeared more like a proud artist, wandering around in search of inspiration.
大義こそ今朝は早いな。
早いというよりも、今が帰りなんだ。理事長、父に呼び出されていてね。
何やら悪巧みかね。
Tagi appeared unfazed by my blatant provocation. The discovery I made from his attitude surprised me. This man was genuinely attached and didn't care about anything. Suddenly he seemed somewhat sad.
何事かあったのか。
わかるかい？これでも隠し事は得意なつもりだったのに。君にはどういうわけかお見通しらしい。
相性というやつだろう。そういうこともある。それで何があった？
成田になら先に話しておいてもいいだろう。昨夜不幸があった。空子の家族に。僕は早朝から彼女にそれを伝えなければならない。
The news didn't surprise me at the least. After all, Shinji Nadi had crafted that very tragedy. I knew Kurofune was perceptive enough to notice that Shinzon's death was a message from an Avenger. I also expected him to call Taigi to discuss the next steps. I didn't expect, however.
空子を起こしてきた方がいいのかね。
なるべくショックは与えたくないんだ。そうでなくても HMI というのは繊細だ。空子が起きてくるまで待っているよ。
It's Taigi's honesty. There was no falsehood or pretense in his words. Taigi actually grieved the tragedy that had fallen over Sorako. Taigi and Sokoro were childhood friends. In all circumstances, his grief would have appeared natural. However, Taigi was Kurofune's son. Him joining the Etoise and entering the door was no doubt his decision. To the Academy, Soroko, the crowns and everything else were just pieces on the board. Perhaps Soroko, Katsuragi and Taigi were actually close enough to be considered of each other, like they had been 7 years ago.
大義、それは。
I noticed him holding something that didn't seem to fit him.
ああ、これはつい持ってきてしまったんだね。
It was a small paper crane. How much paper was used for it? It seemed to have been made with used paper, so it looked utterly ordinary. I remembered my late sister making those quite often. She always made cranes, never flowers or animals. She claimed all smiles, that she liked things with wings. Whenever she started making them, I and the other girl eventually grew bored and stopped, but she continued the job for ages. Only the male childhood friend had ever remained behind to his sister.
それで時の先生とも相談したんだが、空子はしばらく休学させることになるだろう。
Placed the origami crane in his pocket.
本人の確認も取っていないのに急な話だな。
2週間か3週間か、彼女が落ち着くまでの期間だよ。昨夜空子の実家が火災を起こして両親とも亡くなった。家には戻せないから、しばらくは講義を休ませて研究棟で療養させるつもりだ。
両親ともかね。
ああ、死んだ。空子はきっと両親の死を悲しむだろう。
Indeed, Saku would be saddened by the news and shed tears. But even her grief wasn't enough to shake Shinri Narita's resolve.
空子ならここにいたいと言うかもしれない。
Saku seemed extremely considerate of others, and it was likely that she wouldn't want to trouble anyone.
そうだね。事情を説明したのはそれもある。成田、君は空子のことがよく分かっている。彼女はあれでとても強情なところがあってね。昔から。
昔から。
だけど今回は。
分かった。ことがことだ。確かに空子には休養が必要になるだろう。
感謝するよ、成田。
After forming a fake, relaxed smile, he gave me a sharp look as though to gauge me. His gaze felt akin to a poisoned dagger. She conflicted with the consideration he'd shown for Sorako. I merely pretended that I didn't notice it.
しかし、一夜にして両親とも失ってしまうとは、まさにこの世は投げられたコインのごとしだ。
彼のことを知っているかい？
After a pause, Tagi pulled out his device and showed me a photo of a man. I didn't know him. It was Takeshi Hanazono, one of the foolish traitors at the start of the first act of my revenge tragedy.
この男がどうかしたのかね。空子の件と関係が？
まだ何とも言えないんだが、気にかかることがあって調べているんだよ。成田、見覚えはあるかい？
What did Tagi intend to accomplish by showing me that photo? Expression, breathing, mannerisms. I felt Tagi measure each and every one of my reactions. Thought it best to assume he suspects me. Tagi had already enjoyed the Etoiles due to their suspicions of an infiltrator within the academy. Mentioned that she'd at least seen him at the gates. Because the moment he asks, like, Eru, he's fucked. Because Eru knows that he's seen him. Now on, I had to walk a tightrope akin to a spider's silk. If I showed him a single reaction that didn't fit the situation, his suspicions would transform into convictions.
遠目に見たことはある。学園の周りをうろついていた。
Good boy. So I played a role, altogether the role of Shinri Night. I continued the laughable act.
一度だけ見た相手をよく覚えているね。
この場所の空気にそぐわぬ男だ。忘れようもない。エルにも尋ねてみてはどうかね。ちょうど一緒にいた。彼女もおそらく覚えているだろう。
確かに。彼はいかにもそぐわない男には違いないね。
Just as Taigi was suspicious of Shinri Narita, Shinri Narita was also suspicious of Taigi. Was he an agent of Karofune or...
その男がどうかしたのかね。
死んだ。いや、殺された。そして空子の両親も殺された。
殺されたとはなんとも大事だ。ではその男の死と空子の両親の死に
かもしれない。
真実は遥かに遠く、未だ人の手にはなしか。この残酷な世界ほど謎めいた場所は他になく、我々はいつもありえない真実を求めて叫び狂う。
詩人だね。
Takeshi Hanazono's corpse must have remained hidden, yet Taigi claimed that he'd been killed. Taigi wasn't the type to have Baker's approach either, which meant he was already certain of the enemy's existence. Taigi and Kurufuna were backed by the powers of the 200 HMIs at the academy. Those powers, when wielded well, could acquire proof that was out of any normal human's reach. I had to remain vigilant. I already knew I wouldn't be able to hide my identity for long, Sooner or later, they would discover the truth. It was far too early for that. If Narita was exposed already, her work would be rendered moot. Kurofune Mikado was cunning and careful. Approaching and defeating him wasn't easy. In addition to that, it was backed by a giant community that went above all laws. They were fearsome and had a far reach. They seemed to have no solid shape. It was also the reason why Shinri Narita hadn't defeated Kurofune yet. After betraying the Mikados, Kurofune had used the wealth and connections he'd acquired to become a member of the mysterious group. I heard that he was even an important part of the few people leading it, who were known only as the Committee. The Academy was Kurofune's stronghold, his artful masterpiece, and a stronghold and a fortress that kept any enemies at bay. However, no matter how great a fortress, it was weak to attacks from the inside. The sense of protection that came with having large walls made people lower their guards. I planned to take advantage of that fact. So I had to keep my identity hidden while I looked for a means to corner him.
死はどこにでもある。突然に訪れ去っていく。彼らの儚い終わりに哀れみを抱こ
う。そしてどんな死も等しく無残で悲劇的だ。ムクロの目が開くことはなく、彼らの祈りが花咲くこともない。成田は死の重さを知っているかい？
I did. I only survived the tragedy 7 years ago by chance. Fate hadn't been so capricious back then. I'd become an empty, hateful corpse.
生き死にとは人の手の届かざるところだ。聖者は裏切られ刑に倒れ、万夫不当の英雄も流れ屋に死に、悪辣無道の罪人が一生を至福とともに生き延びて幕を引く。信仰者は神の公平を謳うが、それは公平に無関心ということだよ。人間が目に入った塵の形にいちいち気を回したりはしないように。もとより人とは罪と共に生きるもの。天の主が善なるものだというのなら、その目から見た人は等しく散りあくた。多少の罪の高など些細なものに違いない。故に死は神の手が下される正しさではなく、どこまでも人の世のものだ。死が理不尽というなら、それはこの世界が理不尽であるという。
彼、花園の死もまた理不尽なのかな。
本人にとっては理不尽に違いない。死に値する罪人たちであれ、おとなしく裁きに服す者はごく稀だ。それで彼は何者だったのだね。
父の帝黒船の古い知人さ。それほど親しくしていたわけでもないんだが、こんな死に方をするとさすがに気になるというわけだよ。
うん、さもありなんだ。
そろそろ僕は行くよ。空子も起きてくる頃だろう。
何かあればできる限り手を貸そう。
After giving him a half-nod, Tagi walked towards the dorm. Shinri Narita's identity remained hidden, but Tagi certainly suspected me. The moment when I was exposed seemed close at hand. Tagi suddenly turned around as if he'd forgotten something.
ところで、音無サクのことだが。
サクがどうかしたのかね。
死は思わぬところから訪れる。
Tagi Mikado spoke those words like a black bird of ill omen or poet reading a tragedy.
それは噂に聞いた予言とやらか。
それじゃ僕は行くとするよ。
Tagi left without ever giving me a proper answer. Had he warned me that Saku Tanashi was in danger? Regardless if it was a result of his halo or not, it meant the same thing. Saku had gotten too close to the darkness beyond Midori's disappearance. She'd stared into the abyss for far too long. I didn't even have to warn me since I knew that already. If I didn't stop Saku, her life was in danger.
あなたなら相手が竜でも虎でも挑むんでしょ？
Clenched my hands a few times to get a better feel for it. Saku's heat from last night still lingered. Fuck. reminding me of the graceful, dainty, fleeting girl. The small shoulders of her supported the academy as a whole.
だが、侍を止めるはガタシだ。
Saku-Route had stood up and acted out of consideration for a friend. Is there a chance of halting such a noble act? Small clouds floating through the morning sky above felt akin to tiny boats. Oops, fuck. I didn't mean to press that. Lunch seemed to be the same as ever. The advanced cafeteria at the academy appeared far more pristine than the ones from Saku's previous school. Anyways, I wanted to go say that I'm gonna go be right back. See you in a bit. Then I accidentally clicked. Anyways. Hey ho, the pirate's life for me. She looked around. No. I should probably... Did I read that? I think it did. She looked around. Nostalgia mixed with the knowledge of the dramatic changes in her life made her sigh. Nostalgia mixed with the knowledge of the drastic changes in her life and made her sigh. Like the previous school, she didn't have to ask a friend to secure a spot, push through a wave of people, or drop her shoulders. After waiting in line and not getting what you wanted, the academy's cafeteria would serve the students even before 200 of them showed up at the same time. Lunch was handled like a buffet, but you could also ask for different menus and the taste matched that of the best hotels in the world. When Saku-Route first arrived at the academy, there were so few students that you could count all of them on your fingers. There were some buildings that were still under construction. Fuck. I don't know why I'm suddenly so out of breath. When Saku-Route first arrived at the academy, there were so few students that you could count all of them on your fingers, and there were some buildings that were still under construction. The student cafeteria hadn't been built yet, so she had to use the one in the research building.
ここへ来てから3年と少しか。
Looking back on it, her days at the academy had resembled a glorious dream. Saku-Route assumed she'd wandered into a paradise from a fairy tale. The princess had been afflicted with a sleeping curse, but the prince on a white steed saved her with a kiss and lived happily ever after. This wasn't a fantasy, however, but a cruel reality. Saku and the other students who were HMIs, abnormalities, who had severe trouble fitting into the normal world. Many students had suffered severe wounds before they'd arrived at the academy. If not, they were the ones who'd hurt someone. They all thought that within its walls they could escape their detestable pasts. Saku was no exception. However,
どうかしたのですか?
Saku-Route sat in the place in the cafeteria that stood out the most. The academy was designed in a manner that required the étoiles to act as model students. Edo bent forward and looked directly at Saku's face.
心配事ですか? 空子のことですか?
Sorako Katsuragi had been called away that morning. Something had happened to her family, but neither Taigi, who knew the details, nor Tokino, the one responsible for the étoiles, had said anything besides that. The fact that it was hidden from not only the regular students, but even also the insignia herself, meant that something very serious had happened. Before lunch, Tokino had also sent out a message that Sorako would be resting for the time being. It was very one-sided. The simplicity of the text weighed Saku's chest down. It seemed to have the power to crush and recolor everything, and it reminded her of a certain time in their past.
私たちがここで悩んでも仕方ないわ。時の先生がついているんだし、別にどこかに行ったわけじゃなくて、研究棟に移っただけだから。
Her heart felt restless. tried to calm it down and maintain a normal face and voice. She hadn't been left behind yet.
そうですね。
Eru's lips moved as if she wished to say more, and Saku could see that she wanted to mention Mitri and that Sorako hadn't left them like she had.
エル、スクールに来てどれぐらいかな？
もうすぐ3年です。
あなたも古参の部類だもんね。
Saku awakened her old memories. She'd first arrived at the academy. Eru had no control over her halo and acted much like a robot. After everything else she'd thought of to change that, Saku had finally decided to have her interact with some samples. She'd brought in many manga, novels, movies, anime, making her read and watch them, accompanying her every now and then. Out of those, Eru had digested peculiar subculture, anime, light novels, etc. Simplest to understand, most likely due to character archetypes and the like. The mechanical doll had crafted her own character like silk absorbed water.
エルもずいぶんおしゃべりになったわね。
自分、まだよくわかりません。
自分のことが全部わかってるやつなんていないわよ。一番身近でも一番よくわからない。そういうもの。少しずつやっていけばいいわ。最初はかっこいい妹にしちゃおうとか思ってたのよ。今考えてみると傲慢でバカみたいだけど。
Dazzling memories flowing to the front of her mind made her rest her chin on her hands and confess that.
自分、超かっこいいです。サクの妹分がこんなにかっこいいわけがない的な。
ほんと、超いいわ。
サクが心配するのも当然です。最近はヤンキーめも身勝手行動をしてますし。
When nostalgia dispersed, they returned to the main topic. Ada wasn't too good at making expressions, but Saku knew she was
そう
mad.
いうところがいいんだそうよ。
Ada tilted her head like an owl, while Saku squinted her eyes as if she was thinking of something
成田が言
important.
ってたわ。一人で生きるのに向いたもの、そうでないもの。人はそれぞれだって。ありのままの彼女が一番美しい。
あの変態が言いそうなことです。
そうね。
サク？
Ada tilted her head and thought again. She felt something off in Saku's words, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Passed by like a fleeting daydream, and Saku looked the same as ever once more.
エル、今夜私は時の先生とやることがあるから夕食はいいわ。先に寝ていて。
わかりました。
She lied about that, of course. Tokino had called Saku for practical field examinations and negotiations with the outside quite often. And even putting that aside, Saku was the insignia of the crown, so no one had reasons to doubt her. Saku-Tanashi's king lair 3, her halo that allowed her to reign from the top of the academy, and a miracle, as the researchers put it. Saku was stable as an HMI, however that wasn't because her ability was complete. She simply had immense mental strength and processing power. In terms of processing power alone, not a single crown matched her. And due to that fact, she required more maintenance than anyone else. Her regular measurements and checks were scheduled for twice a week. Most ended within 15 minutes, sure, but that was still more common. But that was still more common than for the other étoiles. Those checks were necessary to make sure absolutely nothing happened to the miracle that was Saku-Tanashi and her holy halo. That was why Eru hadn't suspected a thing. Saku had lied to make sure that neither Eru nor Tomo tried to involve themselves in her actions. They were already aware that something wasn't right with her, and that she regularly snuck around the academy. Still, she didn't want to make that and her accomplices. In a way, Soroko leaving the dorm had been a great boon. With Soroko gone, Saku no longer needed to worry about her realizing the truth and trying to help her. Over the past few days, Saku had been poring over the data recorded in the reference room. Saku was a crown and thus had access to materials that were off limits to the normal students. However, she'd had no luck so far.
資料室からアクセスできるデータじゃダメ。本当に隠してあるとすれば 研究棟か、それともローカルなデータベースか。
Mitri Kabutoyama had vanished. In Saku's mind, that was impossible. She simply refused to believe that such a good friend had left without speaking a word to any of the crowns.
でも、それは。
Tokino Yomi said informed them of Mitri's departure. Something had happened to Mitri. Tokino surely knew about it. She implied that.
まさか、時の先生が。そんな、それこそありえない。
Tokino Yomi said, in a core part of the academy since its founding, as a student from the early days, Saku felt relatively close to her. In her mind, Tokino Yomi was a venerable teacher who supported her and guided her through thick and thin. Saku wanted to believe both her and the academy. However, her suspicions didn't subside. In fact, they'd only grown stronger, bringing about in a suffocating anxiety. The more she'd investigated over the past 2 weeks, the more her suspicions grew. Till recently, she'd never realized that the academy had been built on an uncertain and mysterious base. Though one didn't need to think much to notice that. The sheer amount of wealth, power, and connections required to keep a place like Tenkawa Noble Academy afloat seemed ludicrous. Saku had merely avoided thinking about it. She let the paradise pamper her.
だけど、もしかしたら。
The academy wasn't a place to control the HMIs. It was a place that saw HMIs as possibilities, pioneers to the next generation, and taught them to be noble. Obviously, some had failed to keep up and left. Halos were sensitive things, so there were also those who somehow lost them, and thereby lost their place here at the academy. What if Mitri was actually deeply troubled by something and spent her days without Saku ever noticing it? Like, I assume that's the case, and that's what caused the onslaught syndrome. Due to that, Mitri left the academy.
違う、そんなことない。私たちは友達だった。何も言わずに黙って出て行ったりするなんて絶対ない。
Saku chose to believe in their friendship, regardless of her reasons for leaving. Mitri would surely have said something. Saku didn't have any way to contact Mitri's family. She tried calling her repeatedly, but only reached a cold electronic voice that claimed her number was no longer in use.
自分で納得のいくまで調べる。でもこれ以上、一体どこから手をつけたら。
Something had happened to Mitri. Tokino Yomi-san for surely knew.
それは無理か。
Saku realized that Tokino would never answer no matter how much he asked. Even if she tried a more stealthy approach, the woman had no opening.
じゃあどうすれば。
Something fell from above. The metallic fence slammed down like a giant guillotine. It had been installed on the school building's roof and spanned approximately 3 meters in every direction. Falling from such a height made it more than powerful enough to split a person in half. The sharp edges of the metal plates sliced the wind as they fell, then gouged a chunk of concrete out of the ground. After raucous clatter, they bounced off and fell flat on the ground. It all happened in a single moment.
危ういところだったようだね。音無し作。
Sakudarashi had survived. Narita held her within his arms, and for them, a giant guillotine stretched across the ground. What the fuck was that? That felt a little too close for comfort. If I hadn't swooped in, the fence might have crushed Saku.
Narita.
She gazed at me from within my arms, not budging an inch. Her eyes displayed a confusion. She blinked over and over. It seemed her thoughts hadn't caught up to the situation. Felt no presences nearby. After confirming me that we were safe, we put Saku down.
少しこの場を動かないように。
He kicked off the wall and ran up to the roof. It accomplished such a feat due to a method of body control called Chipkali, or Qinggong in Chinese martial arts. With precise weight management, control of their center of gravity, and enough speed, any person could use vertical walls as a foothold. Next, the school's building's eaves, the window dents at the ceiling as the grand staircase.
誰もいないか。
An empty rooftop showered in solemn Moonlight. Cold light mixed with the modern pale building made me believe I was at the bottom of the Dead Sea. I'd merely managed to find empty air. The roof was off limits to students, and the door always remained locked, even if you ignored that. It was late at night, so there was no way anyone could have been there. In order to be certain, I checked the fence, and it seemed to be fixed in place and reinforced. The likelihood of all the things holding it breaking and letting it fall was about as high as pigs flying.
スクールは数年前に開設されたばかり。建物もほとんど新築同然。老朽化による事故の線もあるまい。となると、よほどの手だれの仕業か、それとも痕跡を残す心配のない手段を用いたか。
Defense following an attack against Saku. A warning? No, it was far too rough for that. Something went wrong. No, if I had arrived in time, things would have ended badly for Saku. The insignia of the crowns got caught up in an accident. The academy as a whole would have been thrown into utter disarray. Was even that acceptable to the one responsible? Saku dug too deep already. The situation didn't make much sense to me, so I decided to return to Saku. She was surely in a state of shock, which made leaving her alone a bad idea. I traveled down the wall and found her sitting down exactly where I had left her. She looked as pale as a broken mannequin.
Saku, 大丈夫かね?
Whispered into her ear. She didn't react until my third attempt.
質問は後にしてくれたまえ。まずはこの場を離れよう。自分で立てるかね?
大丈夫。これぐらい。
She tried to get up, but simply collapsed onto her behind like her joints were broken.
あれ変だな。足、まっすぐならない。
Saku appeared to be in a state of panic. She lost control of both her emotions and body. I couldn't blame her, since she'd almost died.
手を貸そう。
I picked her up without giving her any time to resist. She couldn't stand, so carrying her seemed far quicker and simpler than letting her get on my back.
安全なところまで移動する。構わないかね。
はい。安全な場所ってここのことなの?
Saku sat down on the bed, not knowing what to do with her hands. She embraced the green, round plush toy. She looked around like a child brought to an amusement park for the first time. When she did that, made her seem restless. The safe place I'd mentioned was none other than my room in the
この部屋の安全は一応保証しよう。どう安全であるのか詳しく説明できないのが残念だ。
大げさ。
Still holding onto the plush toy, she opened her eyes wide like a little girl.
大体成田の部屋ってのがすでに危険地帯だし。
多少は落ち着いたようで何よりだ。それはともかく、私の部屋はそれほど面白いのかね。さっきから興味津々の様子だが。
いや、珍しいっていうか、男の子の部屋とか初めてだから。
Well, I certainly hadn't had the pleasure of a proper visit from her either. She had entered my room before, but perhaps the morning when she collapsed at the entrance for some reason embarrassed her.
備え付け以外で増えた調度は PC 程度だよ。殺風景ではあるが、部屋は持ち主の鏡だ。私の部屋であるここは、気品において、かのタージマハルに勝るとも劣らぬだろう。
どっちかっていうと、香港空論城？
それもまたよしだ。
And her metal mug. She took it with both hands.
入れたばかりだ。取っ手の部分以外は相当に熱い。
先に言いなさい。
I made the coffee myself. After tasting it once, Saku slowly began drinking it.
昨夜も思ったのだが、熱いのは苦手かね？
ちょっとだけ。別に猫舌ってわけじゃないけど。
筆頭殿には意外に可愛げのあるところが多いな。
何言ってんだか。このコーヒー、変な味じゃない？なんて銘柄？
She made a weird expression as she stuck out her tongue, as though she wanted to say that it was bad, but decided against it.
名前は知らない。アフリカでとある老人からもらったものだ。もう残り少ないが、独特の味わいがある。
ただの期限切れなんじゃ。
Wait until she finished half of her mug and calmed down, then spoke up.
何があったのか覚えているかね？
The shock from before returned, making her embrace her shoulders and quiver and shiver. It was a reaction you'd expect from a normal girl, not the great insignia. The day I first met her, she maintained a cool facade in the face of a barrel of a gun. However, perhaps the recent incident felt more shocking because she hadn't expected to have her life endangered within the academy's walls.
あれ、一体何が？
校舎屋上のフェンスの一部が外れて落下した。危ういところを私が助けた。一歩遅れていれば大惨事になっていたかもしれない。
It was all thanks to Taigi warning me and me keeping an eye on Saku as a result. Might not have made it if he hadn't told me.
でも、ここの屋上のフェンスなんて、普通外れるわけないわ。あんなものが、どうして？
The true nature of every person revealed itself when they were tested. Saku looked straight ahead. The remnants of her fear had turned her into a meek squirrel, and she still wished to face the truth. Strong will in her eye. I saw strong will in her eyes. Humans were frail. She was no exception in that regard, but she had what it took to change the world. She was the noble bearer of a mark owned only by those who dared to face cruelty and tragedy head on.
どうやら先ほどの出来事は事故ではないようだ。
I realized lies and tricks wouldn't work on her, so I told her the truth, bringing reason and vitality back to her.
事故じゃないって、どういうこと？
She appeared so enchanting. Saku Tanashi was an individual who turned to the fact that she was in dire straits and to the power needed to stand tall.
そのままだ。何者かが君を狙った。おそらくは警告。しかし、やり方は相当ずさん。まるで素人。手違いがあっても構わなかっただけかもしれないが。
待って！何よそれは！そんなこと突然言われても、どうして私が警告なんて。
心当たりはないのかね。
あるわけな。
She stopped mid-sentence and froze. Of course she knew. Saku sought the truth surrounding Midori's death. She'd approached the dark underbelly of the academy, the lair of the
これ以
dragon.
上深入りするな。サク、相手はそう言っている。残念ながらこれについては私も同じ意見だ。
深入り？そんな。
スクールのことを調べるのはやめたまえ。今度は本当に命を落とすだろう。
でもそんなこと。私はただ、ミトリがどうして突然いなくなったのか、その理由を知りたくて。
ミトリがどうなったのかを教えれば納得するかね。
知ってるの成田。一体どうやって調べたの？私の権限で調べても何もわからなかったのに。
学園の外につてがあるとだけ言っておこう。兜山ミトリは病死している。この学園を離れてすぐに。兜山家では葬儀も終わっているはずだ。
Saku found herself at a loss for words, and rightly so. She didn't insist that I was lying. She easily understood that my words contained no sense of evasion, excuses, or pretense. A close friend of hers had left the world. Faced with the truth that she might have expected at some point, Saku dropped her shoulders.
また追いつけなかった。緑。
She wept, concealing her sobs. The truth she'd been seeking was a cruel one. But if that was what it took to make her give up, I had no other choice.
成田真理はおとなし策をこの件に深入りさせたくないと思っている。
How unlike me. Normally I would have prioritized her will and determination above all else. Why did I so desperately wish for her to remain out of harm's way? who used underhanded tactics to get my way. Failed to find an answer, no matter how hard I tried. But I knew that I didn't want her to dance with death in vain. To seek the truth behind Mitri's disappearance was to approach the heart of the academy. And to Saku-Tanashi, the academy was a sacred place she wished to believe in. The actual truth did not matter, since it was such an important place to her. All of that was grounded in the relationship between Kurofune and I. She knew Narita would get his revenge. That would surely destroy the tiny paradise. Saku-Tanashi would then realize that the man they had believed in was the source of the epidemic that infested their haven. She would know that I was an enemy who destroyed that which she wished to protect. The only one who deserved to be cursed in that scenario was Shinri Narita, the man driven mad by his lust for revenge. The hope she believed in deserved to be damaged. I saw the will in her eyes that convinced me that she wouldn't lose herself to hatred and would resort their sanctuary after it had withered. That was why this girl who loved the academy and wished to protect it which protected for herself and her friends more than anyone else, didn't have to be involved in this matter. Saku spoke up the moment I had finished thinking.
嫌よ。
Her voice was silent but resolute.
何が嫌なのだね。
ニトリがもういないとしても、私は最後までやり遂げる。いえ、もう彼女のことだけじゃない。今何が起こっているのか、真実を確かめない限り、私は止まらない。
状況をありていに言うなら、すでに君がどうにかできる範疇を超えている。エトワールとはいえ、君は所詮一階の学生に過ぎないのだよ。
私が一階の学生なら、成田はどうなの？
私にはなすべきことがある。そのためにここへ来た。そのための覚悟を持っている。その覚悟は、君が踏み込むべきではないところだ。
踏み込むべきではないときたか。
ついさっき君は命を落としかけた。これ以上踏み込めば、いずれさらなる悲劇と苦難が現れる。世界は残酷な神の手のひらの上だ。不幸だけが万人に等しく訪れる。ささやかな仁義と幸運でそれに立ち向かうのがこの人の世の真実だ。次も今回のように九死に一生を得られるとは限らない。遅かれ早かれ君は命を落とすだろう。君が踏み込もうとしているところは君個人だけにはとどまらない。音なし策を必要とする大勢の嘆きと涙を振り切ってそれでも進むべき価値のある場所なのか。
I used as many words as I could to make her reconsider. I almost laughed at how comical it seemed, but I continued trying to convince her against that course of action. Nobility, courage, friendship, those were all exceedingly beautiful faces of mankind. However, nobility and pride were unneeded beyond that point. The stage ahead was ugly and had no room for what made humans truly human. Oh, but...
だから。
I already knew that such troubles had no hope of swaying Saku-Tanashi.
なぜそうまで行こうとする。
I lost all logic means of trying to stop her. The fact that I've been unable to prevent her from swearing to keep moving forward felt truly frustrating. Despite that, however, there was a smile on my face. I surely wasn't myself.
なぜとあなたが尋ねるの？何度もあなたが言った通りよ。私は、音無し策は、クラウンのインシグニアだもの。
She rose to her feet with enough energy to make a light wind. That alone made me imagine a golden crown on her head, and a fluttering cloak of deep crimson flowing behind her. Failed to peel my eyes off her. Saku-Tanashi was beautiful, not just in appearance, but in her very nature. She shined even brighter than she had when I first met her, so I couldn't help but be dazzled.
音無し策は、スクールの秩序と正義を担うもの。正しからざる行いを正すべき、権利と義務を持ったもの。だから、行かねばならない。人々の藩として、私は、この学園の剣であり盾、秩序の名において、 ここにいる罪なき同胞を守る。そして正義の名において緑が消えた理由を確かめずには置かない。
それがたとえこの学園の意志に歯向かうことを意味していてもかね。
ええ。
A short yet powerful response.
相手がこのスクールそのものであろうと変わらない。そこに過ちがあるなら正してみせる。
秩序とは普遍ではなく誰かの手で与えられるものだ。学園の正義を定めるのは学園自身だろう。それが君の望む正義と乖離していようとも。
それなら自分の信じるところを進むわ。
The clarity of her words and the lack of hesitation made me gasp. Saku was the Japanese word for the nights of the new moon, when the sun and moon aligned at opposite sides of the sky. The moon was beautiful, but its light was that of the sun. As such, during new moons, the light never reached the world. Thus, Saku was true darkness, the deepest black. Even on a night without any light, people had to keep moving forward. And that was exactly how Saku was.
恐れないのかね、おとなしさく。
She decided to challenge the academy, which was one with the justice and order of the world she lived in. Occasionally, people had to fight against what they loved. That was simultaneously the most cruel and precious form of the human will.
足が震えるほど怖いに決まってる。ついさっき死にそうになったばかりなのよ。知らないふりをしてしまえば楽だと思う。でもそうしたら他の誰かがまた緑みたいになるかもしれない。
Like you.
目を閉じている間に他の誰かに置いていかれてしまう。それを止められたかもしれないって後悔する。そんな私をきっと私は許せなくなる。だから行くの。
She spoke of what was right while in the depths of hell. An astounding contradiction. None of what she believed in had any power. She knew she had no backing if she faced the academy as a whole, but even so, Saku-Route didn't plan to stop. It meant she believed in, not in justice or order, but something far greater. And I was certain that such firm beliefs were the very root of humanity.
勇気とは恐れを知らぬ人間ではなく、恐れを克服する人間だ。
何？
つまりサク、君はこういうのだね。この世界の正しさを打倒すると。まるで神話の英雄のようにだ。しかし君では随分と役者が不足だな。
それは
異端の力は英雄の印ではない。それは人ではないという、つまりは怪物の証だ。君の手に伝説の武器はなく、背に翼もなく、地に足をつけて這うように進むほかない。
People who challenged the world itself were pitifully powerless, but that was why.
だからこそ、君は神話の万倍も億倍も気高く美しいのだと思う。
何だ？
古い物語を知っているかね。世界を滅ぼす指輪の呪いから人間と世界を解き放ったのは、あまたの英雄でも勇者でも賢者でもなく、最も小さく勇敢なものだった。
Don't you fucking quote Lord of the Rings to me?
人は意志を持って恐怖を踏破するとき、真に人間となる。いいだろう、サク。では、行くとしよう。
I extended my hand towards her. Saku looked at me, stared at my face. Her eyes widened, and she blinked as though she didn't understand
これ
me.
ってそのどういう、つまりあなたも手伝ってくれる？
私はおとなしサクに嘘はつきたくない。だから先にはっきりさせておこう。私には私のなすべきことがある。あらゆるものと引き換えにしても、それはなさねばならない。成田真理の第一はそれだ。君を手伝うわけにはいかない。だが今はたまたま向かうべき道が同じになった。スクールの真実にたどり着く途中まで共に行くのは嫌かね？
うん、そのありがとう。
So perplexed, Saku took my hand. Couldn't even be called a cooperation agreement since we'd merely agreed to walk as one for a short
私
time.
は私のために行くのだよ。礼には及ばない。
あなたのなすべきことって何？
He fell silent, making Saku slightly panic.
ごめんなさい。聞いちゃダメだったなら。
今はまだ話せない。
そう。
だが、いつか教えよう。その時が来れば。
Though I had to wait until I actually did what I had to. Shinri Narita had returned to enact revenge. In a way, he'd appeared to destroy the academy. What would Saku Tanashi do once she knew that? Through the window, the academy looked peaceful, oblivious to the sadness and filth enveloping society. Many students on campus were completely unrelated to Shinri Narita's revenge tragedy. They had merely taken the stage through no fault of their own. The paths Saku and I walked never had a chance of becoming one. They had merely aligned. The wisdom of old was not correct. Hatred was the mother of more hatred. What was lost would never return, and revenge would only spread anger and more hatred like a virus. Hatred broke through reason and seared the body. It was a chain that binded everything to the past. But even so, I had accomplished my goal. The cost of my blood, flesh, and soul be damned. Could a man truly remain human if he forewent righteous indignation? To have a fresh start, I had to settle the score and part with my past. If I didn't drop the curtain that raised 7 long years ago, I had no means of moving on to the next stage. I was fine, even if the bloody path of vengeance only led me to a scorched wasteland, since this new seed could only grow within the ash.
サク。
どうかしたの？
いや。
おかしなやつ。
She would learn eventually. She would learn that Shinri Narita she'd gazed at, an inhuman avenger all along. My eyes hurt for some reason.
お久しぶりです、音無様。
あんなサーカスみたいな真似して学園の外へ抜け出してまで一体何をするのかと思えば。
We used the path I'd already charted to carry Saku to the security layer. It was almost time for the moon to descend. Country road, some distance away from the academy, appeared completely barren.
改めて紹介しよう。菱谷森。私に仕える優秀な次女だ。
マジ久しぶりでございます。石谷、ご主人の顔は見飽きておりますが、音無様とこんな形で再会できるとは思っております。
では菱谷、これの分析を頼む。
承知いたしました。
何それは？
君がペペロンチーノになりかけた現場の付近を調査して発見した頭髪だ。あるいは警告した何者かの正体を探る手がかりになるかもしれない。
It flouted on the barren rooftop, meaning that it likely belonged to the culprit.
そんなのがあったなら先に言いなさいよ。
どのみち学園内で調べるわけにはいかないのでね。
スクールには200人からの HMI がいるのよ。中には調べるのが得意な。あ、そうか。
その通り。それでは黒船、学園側に筒抜けだ。まして巻き込んだ相手の安全も保証できなくなってしまう。
思ったよりも頭使ってるんだ。
私はいついかなる時も常人の3倍で頭を使っているとも。得意技は頭突きだ。
やっぱりこいつバカ。
ご主人様は幼少時の辛い記憶のせいで連覇になってしまわれたのです。主に頭脳的な面で。
I mean, she's right. You can't really say that she's wrong.
菱谷さんでいいのかしら。あなた事情を知ってるってことなの？
菱谷とお呼びください、音無様。
菱谷は私の味方だ。もちろん何もかも承知している。
そういうことか。成田は最初から別の目的があってこの学園に入り込んだのね。それがあなたのなすべきこと。
アンサーはまたの機会としよう。 さて、頼んだぞ、ヒシア。
承知いたしました。ご主人様もせいぜい足を踏み外されぬよ
あちらの件も進めてくれ。
う。はい、万事滞りなく。
成田のやつ、一体何を考えて。どういうつもり？
As Ishia left, Saku closed in on me, bearing the will to find out what she wanted. Felt flames burn me.
成田は何の目的でここに来たの？
理事長に招かれエトワールとなるためだ。それ以上は言えないと言わなかったかね。
Closed one eye as though caught in mischief. She clearly didn't like that and squinted.
学園に歯向かう真似をする君が今さら私の意図を気にする必要はないだろう。
バカ、気にするに決まってる。私はエトワール、クラウンの筆頭、この学園を守る者。あなたは学園に歯向かうと言ったけど、それは違う。この学園を正すために真実が欲しいだけ。
That's directly trying to fucking unearth the entirety of the academy.
私はスクールを愛してる。間違いがあるなら正してみせるし、過ちを犯したなら償わせてみせる。
Her instant echoing response felt pleasant. No matter what path she took, her love for the academy and awareness of her status as an 12 were unshaken.
だから、
shaken.
もう一度だけ聞くわ。成田真理、あなたの目的は何？それが学園に災いをもたらすなら、私は捨てておけない。
That was exactly why she couldn't ignore the ominous shadow over Shinri Nari.
正すと言ったな。
ええ、言った。
私もそうだ。私もかつて犯された過ちを正したい。それがこの学園に来た目的だ。
言ってる意味がよくわからないわ。
これが今話せる最大限だ。
They looked straight at each other. Our unshakable wills clashed and caused sparks. It felt both long and short. I was the first to look away, for I decided to take her hand, as I once had, and touch her fingers with my lips.
おとなしさく、君は美しいよ。
何？
本心だ。見目形ではなく、あり方が強く気高い。
ごまかさないで。それに私はそんな褒められる人間じゃないわ。
挫折を知っているからかね。見ていればわかることもある。目は口ほどに物を言うと以前言ったかな。ある意味それは本当だ。おとなしさくはこの学園という花壇から芽吹いた大輪ではなく、野原で咲いた一輪だ。容赦ない風雨の辛さを、雪降る冬の冷たさを、荒れ狂う嵐のボーイを知っている。それでも君はここにいて、まっすぐな瞳で私を見る。ここが正常な楽園ではないと知っても、クラウンとしてスクールを守りたいと胸を張る。私なら無ビューな黄金の輝きよりも、火の中で何度も撃たれて生まれた鋼のきらめきにこそ価値を見出すだろう。君のように。
そんな買いかぶらないで。
では分かりやすく、君に好意を持っていると言おう。だからおとなしさくを死なせたくないというのは、一緒に行動する理由としては不足かね。
好意って、それは別に不足とかじゃないけど。
The next day, we returned to the dorm shortly after a discussion on the road. After that night, we'd come to understand each other and began cooperating, if you could call it that. We waited until the lectures ended and began our temporary detective work. Perhaps spy work was more appropriate.
エルはどうしているのかね。君が私と行動を共にしていると知ったら、それこそ後をつけて聞かねないが。
時の先生の指示でしばらくの間成田に色々と教えることがあるからって言い訳したわ。以前エスコートもしたから一応納得してくれたみたい。
Saku and I entered the inner garden. Bright light of early summer vividly colored the modern school building. It looked so pristine that you would never think that it had a dark shadow. Apparently the school incorporated a lot of glass into its construction because it made it appear more open, thereby granting mental stability. On the Academy's grounds, the contact lens reality interface supported us with AR in various ways. For example, if you linked it with a device and punched in the name of a location or a person, the system charted a path to it or set up a call. However, the information we were looking for was hidden by the system.
サク、どうして彼女は消えたのだと思う？
そんなの見当もつかない。
Painful memories made Saku hang her head and place her hand on her large chest, which swayed with heartache. However, there was no despair in her gaze. She remembered not an attempt to shut herself in sadness, but not in an attempt to shut herself in sadness, but to face it all.
学籍離脱の直後に病死している。できすぎた話だ。仮にスクールが関与しているとすれば、その理由は、あるいはこれまでにも同じようなことが起きているのではないのかね。
ミトリ以外にも学籍を離れた人は何人もいるけど、
その中にミトリと同じ状況の者はいなかったろうか。学籍を離れた後に病気や事故で死亡しているケースは、その一部あるいは全てがミトリと同じことになっていた可能性はある。
そんな。
That was mere conjecture on my part, but it made sense. If Mitri had merely vanished, then they were likely concealing some unexpected incident. Still, the way they handled it felt far too perfect. In that case, the only possible explanation was that they were used to it. I was almost certain that they had repeated the act many times already. I found it hard to believe that he would find any useful information if he merely looked through the accessible data and searched for those who'd left the academy.
スクールの理事長である黒船の影響力は絶大だが、人一人消してしまうのは相応にリスキーだよ。一度ではなく何度もであるのなら何をか
Whoops, fuck.
それだけの危ない。
一度ではなく何度もであるのなら何をか言わんや。できなくはないが、できればしたくない。
There you go.
それだけの危ない橋を渡っても、あえてする理由となると、いよいよ見当もつかない。相手も、兜山家なのよ。
Whoops. Saku understood what I was getting at and essentially finished my train of thought, then tilted her head again. Yes, the Kabutoyamas were a major family in Kyushu. If they made a fuss, Kurofune had no means to avoid it. Had he done it while aware of the danger of making them an enemy? It was Mitri the only one who hadn't known, and those around her had settled it long before the fact.
やはり学園の深部にたどり着く以外になさそうだな。
どういう意味？
When Saku raised her voice, I brought my face close to hers, as if we were lovers.
くっつきすぎ！
I whispered into her ear after looking down at her glorious chest until I was
声
satisfied.
を潜めたまえ。会話をモニターされているかもしれない。
どこから？誰が？
Saku suddenly went silent and looked around. However, the manner in which she did it appeared odd, as if she was trying to act natural but
君
failing.
にはもう少し芝居っ気が必要だな。この学園のセキュリティは君たちが考えている以上に限界なのだよ。単に外部からの侵入を阻むだけではなく、内部での行動はほぼ完璧に記録されている。
それは、そうでしょうね。
Oddly enough, the truth didn't surprise Saku
驚
much.
かないのかね。まるでモルモットのようだと。
文句を言いたいところはあるけど、HMI がある意味で爆弾なのは事実よ。私、そういう HMI を何人も近くで見たことがある。だから、
Whoops.
今の社会で私たちは怪物だから。理事長はそれを可能性と呼んで意味があると言ってくれた。 社会もルールも考え方も私たちの存在に何一つ追いついていない。すべて手探り。今のスクールのやり方はベストではなくてもベターだと私は信じるわ。
黒船はスクールの創設者だ。当然その暗部においてもおそらくは。
そうね。
That somewhat cynical implication that Kurofune, the person Saku believed in, was behind Mitori's death made Saku nod and then hang her head.
成田、あなたの口ぶり、もしかして帝理事長のことを以前から知ってるの？
プライベートな質問はまた後日に願おう。それよりも
The fact that he immediately went to like, oh, leave the private question for another time, would immediately set me off like, there's a link between what he's here to do and Kurofune. Talking to Saku seemed to lower my guard. Changed the subject before she pressed the matter.
学園に隠された真実があるのなら、黒船の意図にも隠された目的があるはずだ。HMI を保護、開発支援し、ノーブルにするという名目の真意が何であるのか。それを突き止めれば、おのずと全ての真相は見えてくるだろう。
理事長に直接問いただすわけはないわよね。他にそれが分かりそうなところというと、研究と？
そこでは不十分だ。
Takeshi Anazona had already stolen some of the information on the research building's central server.
ここには200人の HMI がいる。秘密を完全に保持するのは難しい。これまで大きな問題が起きていない以上、よほど慎重にことを運んでいるのだろう。スクールで学生も教員も一般の研究員も近づけないような場所というと、
研究棟の S4 区画か、そうでなければ。
Saku looked at a certain point. Beyond the rose garden, she gazed at a forest that had been there since the academy was built. A blade-like structure poked out from the grass canopy. A windowless tower they called the plant.
ここの学生や一般の研究員クラスには、あそこで何をやっているのか正確には知らされていないわ。危険な研究とだけ。地下に施設があるらしいけど、近づけるのは時の先生やごく限られた人間だけだし、当然私も入ったことはない。
確かに警戒は恐ろしく厳重だった。
ちょっと、まさか過去形？立ち入り禁止だって言われてたでしょ？
Bitch, be silent!
好奇心を抑えられない男なのだよ。
なのだよじゃねえでしょうが。
Saku sighed in exasperation. They swiftly embraced her and made us look like truly passionate lovers.
うわ、どさくさに紛れて何すんの？離せ変態
Situations like that, Saku acted like an older girl her age, which I found most endearing. Moved my face ever closer as it whispered sweet nothings into her ear.
監視って？
The maid who had walked down the brick path next to the road garden. Her steps were fast but rather inelegant.
帝大義のメイドじゃない。まあ、メイドの一人かな。全部で何人いるのかしら。
あれは理事長のメイドでもある。
そうね。何かしてるところを見たことがあるわ。
何か。
そういう意味じゃない
そういう意味とはどういう意味なのか、ぜひ聞いてみたいのだが、後にしよう。じっとしていたまえ。相手は理事長の手駒。つまりは敵だ。
Like Narita has his fucking work cut out for him right now because by God, Saku is way too fucking loud. Like lass, you're basically in the middle of enemy territory. Like sure, you still perceive it as like the academy you want to protect, but by fucking God, the head honcho is currently very much your fucking opponent.
でも、メイドさんなんでしょ？
The maid nonchalantly examined the flowers next to the path.
成田？どうかしたの？
君の手を借りねばならない。
手？それは別にいいけど。
With the approval given, I did what I had to. I'd claimed her lips. Panic. Also, Narita, what the fuck? She opened her eyes, acting as if the world was ending. Shocked to the core, she panicked, resisted and struggled, continued despite her best efforts. It looked as though I was merely embracing her, but her joints were fixed in place, so she couldn't move. She continued struggling, however. I was left with no choice. Calmed by taking a deep breath and deepening the kiss. I used my tongue to hit all the right spots. What the fuck is happening? I sucked on her tongue, then lightly bit on it. It was a truly deep kiss. She eventually stopped resisting, as if saliva mingled and her throat moved as she swallowed it. Stop! We've gone the entire game without weird saliva exchanges. Why'd you have to fucking include it now? She clung to my uniform and let it happen. I'd emerged victorious.
Yosh.
The dangerous moment had passed, so I let her go. Saku faltered and collapsed on the spot like a marionette with its strings cut. Perhaps my sense of victory was a mere illusion.
これでいいのだ。
いいわけあるか
Saku regained her senses, stood up and tried to strangle me before I even knew what had happened.
やめたまえ。とても苦しい。このままではバラではない花畑が見えてし。
なんてことするの初めてだったのにこんないきなりするならするで先に言いなさいよ
手を借りるとはそういう意味だったのだが、詳細な説明をしなかったのは確かに私のミスだ。言えば問題はなかったのかね。では今後そうしよう。
いや、それはそうじゃなくて、それよりも
For some reason, Sakura reddened and looked away. Fingers fidgeted in front of her large, swaying breasts. Eventually, she gazed at me with evident anger in her eyes. The emotion made her tremble, which made her shapely breasts shake yet again.
無事にごまかせたようだ。
何が無事によ、私ちっとも無事じゃって何の話？
メイドだ。君は知らないようだから教えておくが、理事長のメイドは専門の訓練を受けている。
専門訓練？
She appeared to not understand what I was talking about. It made sense. She may have been the Academy's insignia, but she was still a normal person.
戦闘技術の他、つまりスキルを持ったプロということだよ。メイドとしては雅にかける二流どころなのだがね。
そうなの？
何気なくこの辺りを動き回っているように見せていたが、明らかに我々を警戒していた。会話もおそらく聞かれていたはずだ。
どういう意味？いくら専門家でもあんな距離で聞こえるはず。
HMI でありエトワールである君がそんな固定観念にとらわれているのかね。人間は訓練次第で驚くべき力を発揮するし、この距離で集音を可能にする指向性集音マイク程度ならさほど珍しい代物でもない。もっともあのメイドたちはそんなおもちゃを必要としないだろうが。
まさか HMI？ でもそんなこと大義も今まで一度だ。
I'd only realized myself moments ago. The maid's movements and reaction times were clearly inhuman. They don't had to be why they accompanied Kodafun and Tagi. They were bodyguards first, maids second.
実際以前に見た時のメイドはごく普通だった。おそらく玉緒と似たタイプなのだろうね。スイッチを入れて身体機能を拡張する。護衛よりは暗殺向きの素材だな。
じゃあさっきの
そう、見張りをやり過ごす理由付けだ。人目をはばかって若い二人が相引きというのは、こんな場所にいる理由としてはいかにもとは思わないかね。
そうか、そんなことのために私を恥ずかしめたのか。
Saku seemed to accept my reasoning, but then she looked up at the distant sky like an elite secretary to the CEO of a multinational corporation who was using her sickly mother to blackmail her into performing indecent acts. That is very specific! Right. Hard to read nature proved most troubling.
さて、話の続きだが、日中に近づくのは無理だ。続きは夜にしよう。拉致を開けるために私は今夜あのプラントに近づいてみる。君はどうする？
今夜そんなの行くに決まってるでしょ。
さすがは音無し作だ。では準備を整える。また後ほど。
Turned around, fully energized to walk off on my own.
行っちゃった。まったく1から10まで勝手なんだから。
After dinner, Saku enjoyed the piece of candy while gazing at the clock next to her pillow. It was almost time to sleep, but it was also the time she and Narita agreed on. The truth he'd revealed had devastated her. Harsh reality that she couldn't catch up to Dimitri, and the regret due to being unable to help her ravaged Saku's heart. She wondered if she could have prevented it if she remained more alert. But such questions were meaningless, for the past was set in stone. There was no point looking back. She didn't plan to merely forget her failures and what she'd lost. But she had to do what she had to do was ahead, not in the past. She clenched her teeth and looked up. This time it would be different. With the intensity of flame, she convinced herself of that over and over.
どうかしましたか?
Saku's worry showed on her face. Sueru, who was cleaning up the dinner plates, had asked that
別
question.
にちょっと考え事してただけよ。エル、大義は何か問題を起こしたりしてない？
自分の豆を勝手に食いやがったので許せません。今から死なせようと思います。
そういう問題じゃなくて、大義もあれと同じくおかしなやつね。
If the Academy had secrets, then Taiga's chairman's son probably knew something. However, during his 2 weeks in the dorm, he hadn't actually done anything strange. Well, as far as Saku knew, anyway. Taiga had been around the Academy since before Saku. He was always in a strange position where he was neither a student nor a staff member. Rumors had claimed he was an HMI. Turned to fact once he joined D12s. Nobody had an idea of what halo he had. Perhaps it wasn't an exaggeration. Before he'd moved to the dorm, Saku knew of something that seemed like his halo. Taiki often provided predictions. He could tell exactly what people were hiding and warn them about upcoming events. In fact, one such warning from a few years ago had actually saved Saku. Upon hearing of the chairman's son, Saku imagined some sort of lazy libertine. But over the past few years, she'd gained a vague understanding of Taigi, as he was under his shell. Taigi was merely disinterested. The world, the academy, the people, for whatever reason, nothing concerned him at all.
悪いやつじゃないと思うけど、友人だって思っているし。
豆食ったやつは残らず犯罪者なのです。
Life at the dorm had changed when Narita and Taigi joined, but it was somewhat fun. Still, Saku couldn't help but pray that those days continued forever.
そろそろ消灯時間だから、エルは部屋に戻りなさい。
はい。それではサク、おやすみなさい。
With that, Saku Tanashi was left alone. Sitting in her suddenly silent room, she lost herself in thought. Soon she and Narita would head towards the plant.
あんなことしやがって。
Remnants of the feeling of her lips overpowered, even the taste of the candy in her mouth. The fact that the sensation had savored her several hours later seemed strange. Her heart tightened in her chest, and her stomach seemed to hurt. She didn't understand what had happened to her. She almost wiped her lips with a handkerchief, but decided against it. After lights out, we didn't sneak out of the dorm yet. That will be saved for tomorrow. Yeah, I know, short part, but I don't know why, but I'm just not really feeling it today. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one. See you next time. Bye-bye.